What I was also going to ask you about, you said petition there. Have you seen the petition that is going around currently in Alberta? And what do you think of all this
Yes.
separatism, all this separatism movement stuff?
I texted my accountant and I said, should I be buying a piece of land in Alberta?
The new World Economic Forum, Mark Carney, is now Prime Minister, and I've got the best political commentator in Canada. He has the best YouTube channel with me today to discuss what happened. So how are you doing, my friend?
I'm incredible. Thank you so much for having me on.
No problem at all. I just really wanted to get you on here because politics isn't the main thing that I talk about, because quite frankly, I probably have a heart attack by now, considering everything that's gone on. But one thing I just wanted to start this off with is, did you see that viral video? And I'll edit it in so people who haven't seen it can watch it.
Canada ran against, not only against the Conservatives, but also against you. Yesterday, yesterday he spoke about American betrayal. Are you interested in rebuilding relations with Canada, and if so, how?
No, well, I think we're going to have a great relationship. He called me up yesterday. He said, "Let's make a deal." You know, he was running for office. They both hated Trump, and it was the one that hated Trump, I think, the least that won. I actually think the conservative hated me much more than the so-called liberal. He's a pretty liberal guy. But no, I spoke to him yesterday. Couldn't have been nicer, and I congratulated him. You know, it was a very mixed signal because it's almost even, which makes it very complicated for the country. It's a pretty tight race, but he's a very nice gentleman, and he's going to come to the White House very shortly.
But the video of Trump, and basically he says now that, oh, Carney's his best friend. What do you think of that?
I think you're going to see a lot of liberals having buyer's remorse. You know, the whole shtick of the liberal campaign was Orange Man bad, Trump is really bad, and we need to stand up to America by putting our elbows up, and our relationship with America is over as we've known it. And now you're seeing immediately that's not the case. Apparently they're going to have a phenomenal relationship, and it's mutually respectful, and there's probably not going to be any mentions of governor the way we've seen in the past from the president. So
do you think that was more of just a thing that Trump just hated Trudeau? Because I see that it was more of him just joking around. I don't literally think he wants Canada to become the 51st state, because if he really did, it would be obvious to, and I think you've discussed this on your channel as well, like if he just gave skilled workers an easy way to get into the US, like Canada is toast.
I don't know if anyone fully knows what Trump wants, kind of including himself. And that's not to be disrespectful to POTUS.
True.
But that's just the strategy that he has, right? It's easy to say that this was the plan all along, but when you're kind of going all over the place, it's hard to convince people that this was the plan. I've been a fan of Trump, of his first term, and now, and the tariffs and stuff like that. It's a bit of a blow to Canada and the way he's kind of treated Canada and been overly involved in our politics that has benefited the liberals and caused a lot of harm to the conservatives. I'm obviously not a fan of that. I think people on the right in Canada that support Trump as well are starting to feel a bit of mixed emotions. And I think 50%, or not 50, but 41% of the voter base, or 42% of the voter base was for Pierre, for the conservatives. And I think there's a big feeling of hopelessness. Sadness is probably the biggest feeling that I've heard reoccurring. Like the day after the election, I woke up and I was quite sad. I took a sad shower. I brushed my teeth, very sad. I had breakfast and I was very sad. It was a sad breakfast. I took a drive, which was very sad. I had a very sad lunch. Like, I'm just putting sad in front of everything because that's the reoccurring theme. And I just want to mention to everybody that is watching that you win some, you lose some. This does suck. I think getting too caught up in the loss is going to build a lot of resentment. So I think we just all have to, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to move forward and focus on the positive. What's the next step? And I think you're seeing a lot of unity within the conservatives, within the creators. There's a tremendous amount of unity within people uniting to attack Doug Ford. A lot of unity there, because what he did was he sabotaged a lot of the conservative campaign. by kind of openly, indirectly endorsing Carney. I think you're starting to see now we've all had a few days to mourn, and it does really suck. Obviously, sad, big bold letters is the best way I can describe this outcome, but I don't think it's over. I think, and take it from somebody who's said it's over many times, I don't think it's over. I think that we're just getting started, and we just have to rebuild and band together and find a way to look for that next step. And I think that's just getting involved. A lot of people started to get involved with municipal, provincial, federal politics by volunteering and doing all those things. And I think that you saw even Pierre's votes, right? The amount of people that voted for him is over 1 million more than the last election for Trudeau. Like, this was his first election at this level. He did great. He did a phenomenal campaign. We can sit here and criticize what he should have done, what he didn't do, and things like that. But I think all of us that are watching, that are feeling this emotional about it, it's a sign that getting involved at whatever level, to whatever capacity you possibly can, is probably the best way to move forward.
Yeah. And what do you think about him losing his seat? Do you think that that was more political theater just to make him look bad? Or what's your kind of thoughts? Because I've heard so many different things, like first the changing of the riding and the population, then the fact the long ballot thing.
91,
the 91 names. Like, what's your thoughts on all that?
I don't know if the 91 names on the ballot had that big of a factor, because his opponent got tremendous amount of votes and they had to find his name there.
True.
It sucks when you, not that this was a war, but if we, for the sake of this analogy, view this as a war between the left and the right, a political, peaceful war. It sucks if you lose 5,000 troops and they lose 5,000 troops, but if they cut the head off your leader, that's a pretty big blow. And that's kind of how it feels. There's definitely a setback, but I'm pretty optimistic. I mean, I support Pierre. I like Pierre. I've never met him in person. I've been to his rally. I was a little sad that I didn't get to meet him, but there was a lot of people there and he had to continue his campaign. Mm-hmm. But from the stories that I've heard of people who have met him or just being at his rally, there's a tremendous amount of support for Pierre. And right now there's an ongoing rhetoric for, should Pierre step aside? Who would replace him? I firmly believe that Pierre is the right fit for the job. Even though this wasn't the results that we wanted, he's an incredible public speaker. He's incredibly motivating. Him and his wife campaigning together the way they did was incredible to see. It felt very approachable. It felt very relatable. He seems very genuine. And it is a setback. What's to come next? Do they replace him? Does he take a different MP seat and run a quick by-election? Who knows, right? We can play those what-if games, absolutely. But I do hope personally that Pierre continues to stay in the game and continue to fight for us, for change.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that was the saddest part. Like, you talk about sad parts of what happened with the election, but when I saw Pierre lost his seat, like, that was the saddest moment for me. I was just like, my God, like, that is really, really bad. But you're right to look forward. One thing I really wanted to ask you, and you probably haven't been asked this before, and every political system has its disadvantages, like its pros and cons. But what do you think about the whole fiasco with obviously prorogue in Parliament and the Governor General, who basically was the one who okayed that? And do you think that Canada would benefit from becoming a republic? And do you think that's even possible? Just wonder what your thoughts were on that.
With the Liberals in power the way they are now, I don't think it's possible. Not anytime soon. In terms of our democracy, I mean, I was apolitical for most of my life and only really started to pay attention recently. I still have a lot of optimism for our democracy. I know there's a lot of rhetoric and speculation as to whether, parts of this was rigged. And sure, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't even want to entertain that, because I think that it was a fair election. The people got what they wanted, I didn't get what I wanted. 41% or 42% of the voter base didn't get what they wanted, but the 43 or 44% of the voter base did. And that's democracy. I don't have to like the outcome to still realize that that's the democratic process. And that might be an unpopular opinion, and I'm sorry if it is to any viewers, but I think that we just need to re-strategize and get more involved and hope for the best moving forward.
Yeah, nobody's ever going to shoot you down for being genuine. That's one of the things that I absolutely love about your channel, because it's hard to find people who are actually authentic and, you know, they don't flip-flop around just based on what people want to hear, essentially. One thing I was going to ask is, like, with all the political theater that was going on with the liberals and Trump and Orange Man Bad and everything,
I think the liberals, you don't have to like them. I certainly don't like them. And chances are a lot of the viewers of this right now are not going to like them, but they are good, objectively good at elections. They're good at slander campaigns. They've got the media to back them up and propagate them. And I don't have to like it for it to be a win for them. Now, CBC's involvement with, pushing out the rhetoric of, Pierre's security clearance and all that stuff. Like, there were objectively people that voted against Pierre because he didn't have his security clearance. And that got debunked by previous NDP leader Tom Mulcair, who said a little bit too late in the election. I wish that he had come out and said that originally when the rhetoric started being pushed out about his security clearance. But to quote Tom Mulcair, who's someone that I disagree with often, he had said that this was a fabricated story made by Justin Trudeau to hurt and slander Pierre. He didn't need the security clearance. He wasn't breaking any codes or any ethics. Like, it was fabricated, and he lied. Justin Trudeau lied about that. And that, I think, hurt Pierre a lot, even though it was a lie. And we saw in the polls, people literally went and voted against Pierre on that singular topic. And it's greasy. It's disgusting that the CBC helped push that rhetoric out with their platform. I don't like it. I think that's a little bit disingenuous. And maybe, that was part of one of his platform messaging, that we're going to defund them, right? Remove the $1 billion a year grants and money that they're getting from taxpayers, because a large part of what they're doing is a disservice to the truth of this country. They're putting out false information, and when they have retractions, it's not good enough. They have these little Twitter post retractions instead of getting live on the air saying, hey, I'm paid by the government, I'm paid by the taxpayers, and the stuff that we put out was false, and I apologize. Where that is different with creators, and I've had to do this, right? And other creators alike have done this, is if we get it wrong, we include that immediately in a video, like at the start of a video or a dedicated video. Like, sorry, I put out information that I thought was accurate. It turns out it wasn't. And this is me apologizing. That's not hard to do. I have no problem doing that. For some people, like the CBC, it seems almost impossible to be that honest or genuine, whatever word you want to call it. When you talk about a free and fair election, I think it was wrong for the CBC to use their platform the way they did. There's obviously a clear bias. Everybody can see it. And I think that helped push Carney through that finish line and really, slowed down the momentum of Pierre. So I don't like that piece. And the branding of Trump being bad, a lot of that was to do with Carney. They needed an enemy, and is shifting away from Pierre, because Trudeau's enemy was Pierre, shifting away from that and making America the enemy and Trump specifically the enemy helped them. A lot of people felt that fear, that lingering fear of, oh my goodness, like, we are in a really bad relationship with America. And you're right, we need to say bye to Trump and do our own thing. Like, a lot of people fell for that instead of just working with Pierre, or with Trump, sorry. And they were good at not their platform. They were good at their branding. They were good at the election. Objectively, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with how CBC helped them, but they won. Mm-hmm. They won.
One thing which it makes me really angry, and it's really happened like progressively with Trudeau. I am an immigrant myself, so I'm never going to be anti-immigrant. A lot of people in Canada are from immigration. Like, when you look at how many people the Liberals brought into the country, like, it is a massive number. And then another thing that Trudeau did during his term, which barely anybody noticed, and it really wasn't picked up, and there wasn't a lot of influencers on YouTube at that point. YouTube wasn't as big as it is today, was the fact that Trudeau lowered the bar to get a Canadian passport and become a Canadian citizen, which ultimately leads to people voting. And because he took it down, like, I I just look at a lot of these ridings, especially in the GTA, and I've lived in the GTA. Like, it's full of immigrants. Like, it is the epicenter of immigration, essentially. And when you look at a lot of these ridings, like, they were so close that I feel like a lot of, like, I don't know how to describe it, just like deflated, essentially, and just no hope, because I'm thinking, well, in 4 years' time, millions of these people are going to be able to vote. And having been in that immigration system, and I know how bad it is and how it favors people who come from third world countries. I hate to say it, but it favors people because they have less resources, which you could say is fair, you could say isn't fair, but that leads to a lot of those people getting freebies, essentially, and those freebies are coming from the government. So they have a favorable view on the government, as opposed to somebody who goes through that, pays their own way, has to go through the whole system themselves.
That's right.
And then I just look at how close a lot of these ridings are, and I'm like, how in 4 years can this be flipped around? And maybe you can deliver the optimistic view on that.
Kind of brings me back to my point at the beginning, that just getting more involved at all levels, right? Getting on municipal board of directors, getting involved in a city councilor position, getting involved with, mayorship, getting involved at the provincial level, volunteering. I think that grassroots movement is really going to benefit the cause across the country in the long term. Other than that, I've just been too sad to really think about the long-term solution here. I think it's just getting more involved. What does that mean outside of the points that I've brought up? I mean, contact your local politician, right, at any level, and ask them. So far, you have a rise in a lot of creators that are bringing more eyes to this. Like on the conservative side, I actually don't even know how many liberal creators are on this space in Canada, but there's a tremendous amount of channels like yours, right? You're doing a good job. There's a tremendous amount of channels that are rising and bringing in way more attention and way more eyes from different angles, which is in the long term helping the cause. And so I think that time heals. I hate to say it, I hate to sound cliche, but time heals, and it also gives a long runway to figure out what that plan is moving forward. This is all still so fresh. Like, we don't even know what Pierre's plan is. We have no idea, right? The leader himself, like, we have absolutely no idea. He did his concession speech. He got out of there before it was announced that he fully lost the riding, and he's kind of just been MIA since. Right. And everyone's just trying to figure out the emotions, let that settle down. Right. It's like when you get into like an argument with a friend or a family member, like you don't talk about it right away. You let the emotions cool down, and then you come to the table and talk. And I think you're just seeing that at the federal level. And once they figure out what they are doing, that's going to give a bit of a moral compass for everybody else that believes in Pierre, believes in the Conservatives, as to where the direction is going to go. Because ultimately we can speculate on where this is going to go, but the Conservatives have to figure out that piece first before the rest of us can get behind it and support it.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest as well, like, if the Conservatives had even won, like, they inherited an economy like in such a bad place right now that it wouldn't have looked good on them, because they wouldn't have been able to turn it around in 4 years anyway. And Canada's been like in decline for now since the pandemic, and basically with them coming in to just a continued accelerated decline led by, all the economic policies going on. It's not that I like Trump. I just have non-biased view on Trump. Like, some things he does are really good. Some things he does are really bad. Like, I think his trade policies are pretty horrific, economically speaking, but some people think they're really good. But I think the thing with Trump is, if he come in now, like, it's going to be very difficult for Canada moving forward with all these tariffs. And I don't know whether in the next 2-3 years, I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's just going to be an accelerated decline. And maybe my hope is that the same thing is going to happen, which happened in the UK, which was Keir Starmer won the election and his approval rating like tank within the first year or two, because people realized, exactly like even with Carney on day 3 now with the Trump phone call, that it was just a betrayal, essentially. And this guy is just a puppet of the globalists.
You've asked a couple of times and I'm just listening to you talk, and I'm trying to sort through my own thoughts as well on what people can do moving forward. And even though this was a federal election, there is so much to be done at even municipal levels. And this is fresh in my mind because it's happening for me behind the scenes. And I haven't actually talked about this online yet, but there's a lot of local municipal blockades that for political reasons, business owners are putting up this red tape. You've heard Pierre talk about that often. And just yesterday, I don't know when this is going to be published, but just yesterday, I went out and I spoke to a business owner who on Vancouver Island is being restricted because of political reasons on scaling the business, bringing in more business to bring in more employees, right? You can't bring in the employees before you bring in more business. And right now there's a blockade where he could have 80 people working there full time, good, like high paying union jobs. That's being prevented because of local NDP and the city councilors and stuff like that. And it's just ridiculous. So when I talk about getting involved, it's at that aspect. So what does that look like moving forward if you're not a creator that has an audience that can just say, hey, let's do a petition? Well, you could start your own petition. You could email city councilors when you're aware of this stuff and try to add that social pressure, political pressure to people. So that's kind of what I meant, just to elaborate a little bit more on what I meant by getting involved, because I'm doing it right now. I don't want to call them opportunities, but these stories have just come to me and it's stricken a chord with me. And so I'm actually I spent like 5 hours yesterday walking around this business yard, right? It was like I'll talk about it later on, but it was a shipyard essentially that deals with big boats and stuff like that. And yeah, I heard the guy's story, checked all the boxes, Environment Canada and everything. And 80 good paying union jobs that could go into the community, Indigenous local community and just Vancouver Island individuals that are qualified to work there, Red Seal certified, is being blocked because of local municipal politicians. And it's greasy. And so we're talking about at the federal level, we had hoped for a better outcome. Of course, undeniably, that's what we all hope for. Chances are, if you're watching this, right? But getting involved doesn't just mean doing things at the federal level. It means at the local level. And that might just be a blanket term and people maybe not know what to do with that. But I think just planting those seeds and people looking into things a little bit more who want to be more involved is a good start. And I think there's a tremendous amount of momentum because there is a power shift right now. It feels like we had an opportunity to go real grassroots or the elites, and the country chose the elites. Well, let's work around it. Let's work with what we have so that we can make a difference individually by using each other, using this awesome community that is not only online, but they're in person, right? And so that I think is where this is going to go.
I think that's a great idea. And there are so many businesses that are held back through restrictions and red tape. I think the problem is when there's any sort of economic issues, everybody looks at the government to save them. The government steps in and they basically expand themselves. So you just see expanding municipal governments, expanding federal governments, and it's
trying to suppress people to keep them poor. Sorry to cut you off, but that's kind of what the liberal and NDP government is about, is getting people sucking at the teat of the government, right? And it sucks. It sucks. Like, I had 5 or 6 hours worth of conversation yesterday in the same yard, speaking with the same few people. And it turned out that some of the people that I know and some of the things that I'm able to do through online or just connections could potentially, like a trickle effect. Like, I'm not solely responsible at all. I'm not taking credit, but it's a trickle effect where I may actually be involved with 80 local people getting full-time union high-paying jobs. Like, that's awesome. Extremely rewarding. And then also, I don't know if you saw the Nanaimo rally where Pierre Poilievre was one of his final rallies before the election, where I told a lady that I was going to get her a car because her car was sitting in the driveway, broken down for 2 years. And the community came together and fundraised just about $20,000 in 12, 24, 36 hours. So like, there's a real movement that's happening. Like, we've all to some capacity been harmed or hurt by this liberal regime. And so banding together, coming together as a community, grassroots. What does that mean? Those are just blanket terms. Well, it means helping a woman, a veteran woman who's had a car that she can't afford to repair for 2 years sitting in her driveway, giving her an opportunity through crowdfunding, which was a total accident, because when I said it, I meant that I was going to get her the car, and then turns out the community wanted to pay for that. So that was pretty sweet. That was really incredible. Yeah. And so that, like, those little stories, they compound and they compound and they make a difference. And then all of a sudden people start to see the good that comes from conservatism. I don't know if this is happening on the left. I don't know if there's stories like this on the left. Maybe there are, maybe there aren't. It doesn't really matter, but there's real good that can be done by using our channels and bringing the community together through petitions, through charity, through whatever it is. And so I think that that's kind of taking power away from the elites, and that's the beginning of an incredible grassroots movement. So even though it feels devastating and sad and maybe even hopeless for where we are right now, politically speaking, trust me when I say that this is just the beginning.
That is great words there. What I was also going to ask you about, you said petition there. Have you seen the petition that is going around currently in Alberta? And what do you think of all this separatism, all this separatism movement stuff?
I texted my accountant and I said, should I be buying a piece of land in Alberta? Because not like something extravagant, just, you know, a little bit of money just so I can have a piece of whatever is going to happen. I mean, I don't blame them. I don't blame Alberta. It's the moneymaker of Canada. I don't blame Alberta. There's obviously, I think, inarguably the strongest conservative movement in Canada is Alberta, right? Known as the Texas of the North kind of thing. Oil and gas and, you know, lower cost of living and just getting the crap end of the stick from the government. All that money that Alberta's making is going to Quebec and Ontario. And I think the people are sick and tired of it. And this is the part of our democracy that is unveiling in front of our eyes. Quebec tried in 95 and they weren't successful. I think that if it ever were to happen in Canada, the history of Canada to now, it's going to be with Alberta. I genuinely think that the people are absolutely fed up. The premier, I think Danielle Smith just changed the amount of votes that are needed or signatures on the petition down from 600,000 or 700,000 to 100 and some, and they got it within hours or within a day or something like that. Democracy is about the majority of people feeling a certain way and expressing it through their democratic rights. The Liberals won the federal election, but the people of Alberta obviously feel a certain way, and I don't blame them for it. So everything that's going on there is legit. And if there is an outcome that's, you know, separation for Alberta, and that's what the people want, and everything's done through the proper democratic process, then that's what happens. And that would be very unfortunate for Mark Carney, Trudeau 2.0, under his first year as prime minister, to have lost the biggest money-making province in Canada. That would just show that he's not a good leader.
Yeah.
Putting that out there.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. And I just cannot help, though, think that if that happened, it would be the same, if not worse, as what happened with Brexit in the UK. Because Brexit in the UK, when all that was going on, was all about funding, that we're sending money away to the EU. Right. And the UK was sending lots of money to the EU. And they were like, we're going to bring this money back. You know, we're going to get the economy going again. And really, like, it was a total disaster in the end. Like, we can look back now and just look at what a disaster that was for the UK. Like, business investment just went because they didn't like the uncertainty. And same with tariffs right now. Like, businesses hate uncertainty. And I think the problem is, although people in Alberta, they feel like really hurt by what's happened in the election. And don't get me wrong, I think a referendum would be a good thing, because if they got electoral reform, that would benefit them greatly, because they are underrepresented, as many people pointed out during this election. People need to not just have this rosy picture of Alberta separating from Canada is just going to be amazing, especially when you consider the history of Alberta's economy. Like, it is boom bust, up and down like a yo-yo. They have the commodities, they have the resources, but they are very isolated and they are very dependent on certain industries. They're not very well diversified. So it could be a really great country, and I like to think that it would be. Like, I'm really pro Alberta separating, but like, I know what feels good isn't always the good thing, basically.
Correct. Yeah.
So
I agree with that. I don't know if America, talking about Alberta separating, I think that would eventually potentially lead to the 51st state being
I think
Alberta.
so.
I don't think that America would allow a country to be between Canada and America. I think that they would eventually get absorbed. I don't know if I certainly don't know this process. I don't know if anyone actually knows this process since it has never happened successfully. We're approaching the same experience that Quebec went through, and if it's successful, that's never happened in Canada. So we don't really know what that's going to look like. And it's an adventure. It speaks volume, and it would be very unfortunate for Mark Carney to lose an entire province, the biggest money-making province in this country, in his first year. Wow, what a bad leader he would be.
even just having a referendum on the table, how bad does that look to
Immediately?
him?
And the amount of support it's received is wild.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I know you're a really busy guy. Have you got any final words, anything that you want to say before we wrap up?
Subscribe to this guy. He's doing some phenomenal work, and he is bringing attention from a different angle. And I think that everybody has a part to play, and he's doing his part. So thank you very much for your time of day, for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for coming on. And listen, subscribe to Mr. Sunshine Baby's channel. I know you all do anyway, because it comes up in my YouTube analytics that you are the #1 channel that my subscribers watch. And I love that. I love your channel too. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much.